my arm a bit too, so thank you, Errol. I had my near-death experience 16 years ago. I had not spoken publicly about it until a few months ago when I presented at the Seattle Alliance. And I was quite resistant to it, and Errol and Dina, who was here, and the gentleman that I spoke to from Seattle and also a local Seattle client were very encouraging, and it was really deeply healing for me to vocalize and speak about and own in a different way, not just what the experience was, but how that's impacted my life. I think the reason that I didn't share about it openly, about the totality of what that experience was, is that I was getting feedback when I would, just give a little bit of information to someone. Oftentimes the feedback that would come back was, well, that was just an anesthesia response. And so it created in me a reticence to be very, very open with some of the more woo-woo-y things that I experienced on the other side. The other thing is that it's taken me this long to get a strong connection, not just to what I experienced there, but how to integrate that into my own life, how to bring that forward in my work in a way that's practical. Oftentimes, spiritual principle, I believe, is, it's really great to hear it, and we love the idea of it, but we often are stuck on how to make it real in practice in our lives, in how we relate to life. And so my near-death experience is foundational to the development of my work, which is the Living Roots Connection. I work with people to help them to awaken to their own spirit and joy in their lives. And one of the main ways that I do that is by teaching them about relationship with what's here on the planet besides just our own noggins and our own self. And for me, that has a lot to do with nature. And as I share, I'll share a bit more with you about the things that happened after my near-death experience and how I feel that those experiences and teachers that came my way were so instrumental in developing the gifts that I was given. It's easy to look in hindsight and say, wow, that happened, and that led to this, and this led to that. And so I've been very blessed in that, and I'll share more about that as I go on. My main prayer with my sharing today is to be able to not just share the information, the teachings that I was given or the impact on my own life. I'm hopeful that there can be an energy that comes through. I think there was a woman in the back there that talked about how she's not yearning anymore for the other side because she realizes it's here. And that's my experience as well, is that the more connected we are with our spirits and how we relate, how we give and receive love, how we utilize the gifts that we have, the more peaceful and joyful we feel. And for those of you that read my bio, that's part of the intention is my work is not just with individuals, but what does that create on the planetary level? If we can embody the feeling and the knowledge that's what life is and act in that way, does that create planetary sustainability and a consciousness that's more loving on a global scale? So I'm hopeful that not just the words will come through, but that an energy and a feeling will come through for those of you that have a need, something, an idea or an exercise or maybe just a feeling that helps you and furthers you on your path. So how many of you have been out in nature and have experienced something that you think is, or feel is beautiful, and have had that wave of feeling come over you? It's kind of like that, wow, that is just so beautiful. I have yet to meet a human being that says no to that question. And it's fascinating to me because it's not, oh, that looks beautiful. It's, that's beautiful, and there's this feeling within us, a peace and a joy that's universal. And my belief about the reason that that happens is that there is an energy within nature that gives life to, that is source. So whether it's a tree or a rock or an animal or the grass or the earth itself, there's an energy within that that is life source, that is essence. And we recognize that energy as beauty. And within that recognition of that, we begin to resonate with it. Have you ever seen tuning forks? You do one tuning fork, and you put another tuning fork next to it. What happens to the second tuning fork? It starts to pick up the tone of the first, or to resonate with. So how we experience beauty and the peace and the feeling that comes over us has something to do with our resonance or our relationship to that which gives life to within nature. And the more we know about how to connect with that, which is not go out and get it, it's how we give and how we receive with that. So not just how we receive from it, but how we give to that. The deeper that is within us. So what I'd like to do is share a little teeny bit about my life before my near-death experience. And then I'll move into and talk about what that was for me. And share some of the teachings that came through, and then talk also about the impact that that near-death experience had on me, personally and within my work. I grew up in a military family. I was born in the Philippines and came from still come from, a very loving family. Very conventional, very Republican, Presbyterian. Still to this day, if I'm sharing with my parents about what I'm up to in my work, I remember recently I said something about energy to my father, and he looked at me and he said, huh? 12 volt? What? And so they have no idea what their daughter does, but they're very loving. And so my experience in my childhood was one of moving from place to place and meeting all different kinds of people. And within that, experiencing a deep, deep aloneness. You know, the little girl walking into the cafeteria with her lunch bag, trying to figure out where to sit. Also, a lot of experience with judgment. When you're the new kid on the block, people are quick to want to label, this is how she is. And so that was a strengthening experience for me. But it also created a sense of isolation. And part of what I did out of that isolation is looked to my connection to spirit and my connection to my belief in higher power as a stabilizer during that time. So my near-death experience is not a story of, oh, you know, I used to be this really hateful, bad person, and then I had my near-death experience, and now I'm an angel. The gentleman over here asked me after my near-death experience, was I all positive? And I said, no, sometimes I'm really kind of crabby. So that spiritual connection was real for me. And one of the validations of that for me was after my experience. I called my oldest friend and said something about what had happened to me. I knew her in 7th grade, and I said something like, well, now I'm actually really weird. And she said, well, don't give me that, Sharon. I remember in 7th grade, you would corral the neighborhood kids, make them sit on the lawn, and talk to them about spirituality, which was quite embarrassing. I don't remember that, but yeah. So I was also asking my mother if I could attend a transcendental meditation class. This is at 13, mind you. That was being offered at the library. I was so fascinated by what was this meditation thing that I'd never heard of. And was told that I could not go because it was a cult and it was a bad thing. So this is when I started to learn to pull back and hide some of my true beliefs about what spirit was and awakening to that. So I had gotten a wart frozen off my hand about 10 times in a row, and every time it came back, have you guys had that done before, where you get more and more and more every time you get it frozen off, 15 replaced? And read an article on hypnosis, and I thought, well, if this person got hypnotized and got rid of half their warts on half their body, I'll just hypnotize myself. And I woke up the next morning and they were gone. And they've never come back. So hopefully this gives you a connection to some of my life before my experience. One other key event was when I was in 6th grade. And I lived in New York. I was a minority in the school that I attended. And I had this fabulous teacher, Mr. Feuerstein, who was wanting to get kids connected around sharing their ideas and what they knew. So we would have rap sessions. And we would draw a topic out of the hat, and all of the kids would say, hey, here's what I know about that. And the topic that we drew one day was regarding interracial marriage. And we went around the circle, and I said, well, here's what I know about that. And I parroted something that I had heard growing up. And the gal sitting next to me says, well, I disagree. And I come from a biracial family, and here's what I believe, and here's why, and I've lived it. And boy, was I humbled, which was excellent, because in that moment, I remember connecting with the reality that I knew nothing in a comprehensive way, and that I was saying things that I hadn't really examined from a place of searching. And so I think that moment was a key moment for me in saying, I'm a seeker, I want to understand and know. And that's in fact one of the things that I've strived to do with the near-death experience, is to understand and to know what I experienced there. And I feel that energy from all of you in the room too, that you're all here because you're curious and questioning and open with your hearts at some level. So I'll talk a bit about my experience. Before I do that, I'd like to read something that I think is another representation from a different perspective that challenges what perhaps we think we know about life and what we think we know about death. And it's something a friend of mine emailed me, and there's no credit to the author, so if you know who it is, I'd love to know. It's called Life Cycle. It says, I think the life cycle is all backwards. By the way, the board heard this morning and they laughed, and a few of them gave their permission for me to read this, so I'm not responsible for this. You should start out dead. Get it out of the way. You wake up in an old age home feeling better every day. You get kicked out for being too healthy, then you go collect your pension. Then when you start work, you get a gold watch on your first day. You work 40 years until you're young enough to enjoy your retirement. You drink alcohol, you party, you're generally promiscuous, and you get ready for high school. You go to primary school, you become a kid, you play, you have no responsibilities, you become a baby. You spend the last 9 months floating peacefully with luxuries like central heating, spa, room service on tap, and larger quarters every day. Then you finish off as an orgasm. I can't believe I just did that in a public presentation. So, would you rather have me talk about my near-death experience or orgasm? I don't know. Oh. So my experience with my near-death experience was in my late 20s. I was diagnosed with cancer. But I had one thing happen right before that, which was an exposure to the experience of death that really changed me. And that was that I was going off to work, and I was driving off to work, and I had this feeling that I'd forgotten something. Okay, well, I don't know what I forgot, but I'll remember when I get home. And I got home, and the paramedics were there. And my friend Rudy had been struggling with liver cancer. The last time I'd seen him was a couple weeks before, and he looked well enough then, but I knew they were there for him. And so I was standing there outside of his apartment. I knew that's why I was there. But I didn't know what I was being called there for. I had no idea. And his brother walked out of the apartment, and I said, oh, they're for Rudy. And he says, yeah, he's not doing so well. He's really, really scared. And you must be Sharon. And I said, yeah, how'd you know that? And he says, oh, well, Rudy's told us all about you, which was a surprise to me because he was someone that I talked with occasionally. We'd gone to dinner a couple times. We were friendly neighbors, but we were not close friends. And so I said, well, I didn't want to intrude on the family. Oh, no, he would want to see you. So I went in, and Rudy was in a fetal position on the bed. He was hyperventilating. He had lost dramatic amounts of weight, and it was very apparent that he was close to death. And I knew I was supposed to do something, but I wasn't sure what. So I just put my hand on him and leaned over and whispered in his ear that it was okay, and tried to radiate and send him love. And I watched as his breathing evened out and became more peaceful, and a different look came into his face. And so then the medics took him off to the hospital, and I followed. And I went to the restroom before I was going to go to his room to visit with him. And I was in the bathroom, and I felt this deep rumbling, almost like an earthquake kind of rumbling. And I knew that he was leaving his body. Walked down the hall, and his mom and sister were walking out of the room. They said, Rudy's gone. And so I was with his family through all of their family ceremonies, and trying to give the best I could. They were emphatic that I would be there, but I still didn't know what I was supposed to do. And to tell you the kind of place that I was in, at one point I was looking at Rudy in his casket, and the truth of where I was I was looking at his body, and I was thinking, wow, what a trip. Dead bodies are so weird looking, because it was such a house. It was not him. And then his sister and mom came up behind me, and I heard them whisper, look, she's praying. I thought, oh, okay, I better do that. So I did. And I found out later from one of the family members that Rudy had said to them, shared with them his high regard for me, or his perception of me as a spiritual person. And so what I knew in that moment was that his spirit called me home because he was scared. And his fear was disrupting his transition to the other side. I felt him for 4 days with me. And I also believe that he wanted me to somehow be a comfort to his family with his passing because he was quite young. So that was really my only experience with death. When I was diagnosed with cancer a few months later, and when I was a kid and we would have slumber parties, you know how when kids are in slumber parties, they tell stories to try to creep each other out? And we were doing that when they were saying, how old are you going to be when you die? You know, one person was 108, 78. I said, my late 20s. And that was the creepiest thing. Anybody said, ew, late 20s, that's so young. Good thing I didn't remember that when I was diagnosed. But in fact, my near-death experience was in my late 20s. And I took a period of time to sort through what I was supposed to do. Why is that significant? One of my teachers, after the experience, is he's made his transition as well as a Cree elder. And he taught me, he said, your spirit speaks to you through your feelings. And I think that's one of the deepest things I've ever heard. Because when we have huge fear, it's our spirit saying there's something here for you to learn. What's fueling the fear? And then that can create movement and healing. If the feeling is peaceful or joyful, it's our spirit saying, okay, you're on track here. Or there's something about where you are in relationship with this thing that's what's needed. And so in my exploration about the treatment to have for my cancer, I was getting a lot of advice. And actually that's quite typical with cancer patients. I counsel cancer patients, and one of the things I universally hear is, I'm so sick of all my friends calling me and telling me to suck this mushroom down from Brazil and I'll just be healed. And so that was part of what happened for me as well, was the polarization between Western medicine and treatment and holistic medicine and treatment. And isn't it nice that we seem to have a bridge building between the two of sorts now? So it came down to me getting connected to what is it I feel I'm supposed to do. And surgery was a part of it. So I decided to have the surgery, and I did. I was not a very easy patient to have. I remember when they wanted me to lay on the gurney, I said, no, I would like to sit, thank you very much. I highly recommend that, by the way. Sitting on a gurney is much more empowering than laying down while you're being wheeled down to the OR. And I was in the surgery. I did not go through a tunnel. I was instantly in the presence of a council of light beings. And this council, hard to describe. If you can imagine molted golden balls of light moving within a form. So there was movement and there was an image of some sort of form around it. And then behind this council of 12, there was a sea of other beings that were different. And I was standing within their presence. And the feeling that was there was all loving, no judgment, a vibration that wrapped every part of my being with a nurturing energy. And so I was there, and within that, my life review began. And the life review and the other things that were brought after it happened in a way that was not linear. So it's difficult to describe in words. Actually, any of the things that I experienced there are difficult to describe in words because words have a beginning and an end to them. I had one person say to me one time, yeah, near-death stuff is ineffable. You can never find the words. Why bother? And I said, no, it's worth reaching to find the words to articulate or to begin to articulate because words have power. And so if we can begin to reach that, we actually start to draw the energy of that other realm into this realm. And maybe some of you, as I'm talking or any of the other presenters talk, you can feel that happening. So the life review was an imaging, a feeling, a knowing that had no connection to time. So it was every thought, every word, every feeling, all at once, but as if it had the depth of when it happened. Only it had more depth. Because the experience of that was not just from me, Sharon. It was also from the experience of the person that I was relating to within that experience. And so I very, very clearly got to feel that if I said something to someone or did something that involved someone else, and that action or those words were from a place of higher truth and rightness, there was kindness and there was honesty within that. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way, because remember, in that realm, there's a connection to knowing what's spiritually correct. If I said those words from that place, even if the other person wailed and moaned and you did it to me, I would feel no personal responsibility for that. I would know what that offered to them for their growth. If, however, I said something that was from my own garbage, let's say I had a personal insecurity and I said something that was hurtful to someone, even if they smiled back at me and said nothing, I would feel that block within me as if I was the recipient of my own actions and my own words. And then I would feel the ripple from that. But that knowing was devoid of judgment. So one of the words that I like is responsibility. Because to me, the word responsibility means being willing to respond to my spirit, or to spirit. And so in that review, if I had said or done something that was hurtful, I had a willingness to be responsive to what was needed and to create a different outcome with my actions or my behavior. And so within that, there was an overview or an over-knowing of all that is. So I moved from the life review back to the council, and I communicated to them, which feels somewhat like telepathy, or offering impressions, that I felt pretty good about my life. There were some things, but I felt pretty good about the life I'd lived. But I had a desire to be of more service and to experience family love. That those were areas that I didn't feel I had developed in the way that I wanted to. And so they gave me the choice to come back or to stay. And I chose to come back, obviously. After the choice to come back, they began to transmit teachings. And they shared that I would be given some gifts to facilitate those two pieces of service and of family love. And so the communications that were given had to do with meaning. And one of those was a communication that they shared was life. And so if you imagine a circle, and the reason I use a circle is because it's what most accurately represents the feeling of what they share. And on that circle, there's love and there's knowledge. And if you imagine a flow from love to knowledge and knowledge to love and love to knowledge, and they said, this is life, and life is time. And so as you deepen your capacity to give and receive love, that flows into your ability to deepen your wisdom and your knowledge. And your relationship to life and all that is, what's offered to you through that, as it deepens your knowledge, opens you in a different way to giving and receiving love. And so they said, that's life. That's what the purpose or the focus of our experience in this physical realm is. And there's a freedom in that for me, because that doesn't mean that I'm bad or wrong, or that I screwed up, or that my sole purpose needs to be grandiose. It's simply enough to give and receive love and seek to understand. And then to share that in the ways that I'm drawn to. And so I talked about how part of my personal searching or seeking was how to take the experiences that I had had and make it real. The how. Like, okay, that's all great philosophy, Sharon, but how do you activate this here? How do you live it? How do you make it alive here? And so in my own life, or if I'm working with someone, and they had a block, for example, with how they were receiving love. They're a great giver, but boy, don't ask them to take anything in. That's too hard. I might suggest that they go out and they greet their day. Well, what's the reason for that? So they're outside, they're in the beginning of their day, they're out with nature, the vibration of nature is there being offered to them in their spirit. They're grounded in their body, and they open their heart with a gratitude for the gift of their life and the experiences of their day. And what happens? There's a heart opening, there's a connection with their spirit, there's a receptivity to the vibration and the medicine that nature offers within that moment. And there's also an alignment with the season of the day, the morning being the spring, that strengthens them throughout their day. Or they might go out and connect with a tree and have a way of relating to the tree to actually heal that block that's within them that inhibits their ability to receive love. And so this is part of what has worked for me about how to make it real. Another thing that the Council of 12 shared is that who we are is an aspect of the Creator, or is an essence of the Creator. And so if you imagine a crystal and a light shining on the crystal, what happens? The different dots refract off of it, and they all float around the room, and they're all different colors, and they move. So who we are is an aspect or an essence of the Creator, just like those little dots of light. And our expression of our essence is our prayer of gratitude for the gift of our lives. So our expression of our gratitude is of our essence is our prayer of gratitude for the gift of our lives. And so if we withhold who we are, it's a statement of ego. Now that doesn't mean that blasting who we are everywhere is expressing our essence, because if that blast comes from the need to be seen or whatever, then it's not. But I love that, because then our expression of who we are is our prayer of gratitude. It's our way of saying thank you. And it's also a way to strengthen us, give us courage for stepping out in ways that might be scary. I'm an introverted person. It's kind of freaky to be up in front of a room of people. And it's an expression of the essence of who I am. And so my alignment with that helps to give me strength and courage to move forward. And so whatever is within your spirit in your life to express, and the fear is there, that's a way to strengthen yourself with that. Another thing the council shared, life is a passage that we move through to awaken the core of our spirits to itself. Love is the expression of that core. So all the pressures that you feel about living your life purpose and doing great, grandiose things, let go of that. Because life itself, giving, receiving, relationship, is the passage that we move through to awaken our spirit to itself. And the expression of that awakening is simply love. And so how do we see that reflected in what nature offers us? Well, think of what happens with expression, with the seasons, with a tree. So in the spring, the energy's moving up the trunk of a tree, and little buds are forming on the branches, and the energy's very like this. You feel it in the air in spring, don't you? You get kind of excited. Ooh, let's go play. And then in the summer, the energy's high up in the plant. So how does this fit with what I was talking about? Because we have seasons in our lives as well, and we have seasons in our day. And our alignment with that and honoring of that has something to do with how we can give to life. So summer is outward expression. Fall is reasoning through and harvesting. Winter, I love winter. Everything looks dead, right? But the energy's in the root of the tree. And in that time is when that tree is getting its strength. And so our quiet times, our inward times, the season of winter, when we sleep at night, are times that we are given strength on a core level. And there's deep knowing and integration if we've worked with it. With the seasons of our lives, that's when we're older or we're elders. so fascinating to me that when I met my late elder, he would talk and he would share about the old woman or the old man. And then I met his niece, and his niece would refer to him with great respect. She would say, "The old man says." And I remember sharing things with people that didn't have a connection to his culture. And they said, "Oh, the old who? That's so disrespectful, Sharon." And I thought, wow, well, that's an interesting commentary on our culture. That to say somebody is an old woman is nothing other than a term of endearment and respect for how that person has walked in their lives and the wisdom that they've attained. So life is a passage that we move through to awaken the core of the spirit to itself. They also showed a triangle. And if you imagine a triangle, and on the bottom point, the heart and the feelings, and on the other bottom point, the mind or knowing, and then the movement up, which is Christ consciousness. And by Christ consciousness, the context that I was given for that is love. And so, within that triangle, there's a teaching about what's here in the synergy between our heart and our mind. And living from our hearts and then relating to our minds for understanding. Another of my teachers is a 95-year-old woman who's a healer. I'll talk about it a little bit more in depth as we move on here. She taught me, she said, the heart is the container for the light of our soul's light. And yet, in Western cultures, when you ask people, well, who are you? Where are you in your body? Oftentimes they'll point to here. In many indigenous cultures, they'll point to here. And Western science now is starting to discover things like 60% of all the heart cells are atrial neural. And that the heart is, they have experiences they can't explain with transference of knowledge to heart transplant patients. We intuitively know this because our language reflects it. For example, if Errol says something to me that's just really nasty, and it really hurts my feelings, what do I say? I say, oh, she broke my heart. Or it was like a knife in my heart. Or my heart was shattered. We don't say, my ear shattered. Or it was like a knife in my toe. Or it gave me a brain drain, right? So we intuitively know that there's something different going on with our hearts. And so, what does that matter? It means the more we know how to relate to the heart, then the more depth we have with relationship with our spirit. Then we get back to that love thing again, don't we? I should stand up here and just say, love, 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 love. And that would be the whole thing. So I came out of the operating room, and remember, I was with the Council of 12. They were a council of gold and yellow light beings. And my family, who remember is very conventional, I remember hearing my mother whisper to my dad, look, we've got to talk to the doctor. She must be having liver failure. She's bright yellow. And my boyfriend at the time, who'd been doing healing work for about 25 years, was very visually gifted, later told me that my auric body was this brilliant golden yellow color. And for a period of several days afterwards, the physical body felt foreign. If I wanted to see, I had to not talk, which for me was hard. If I wanted to talk, I had to close my eyes. And the body felt kind of just awkward. And there was some pain going on there too, but it did feel, the sense of it felt different. And so, if I look 16 years later, and I look back at what transpired after my near-death experience, I can definitely see and feel a directed purpose in the experiences after that. And my belief is that that directed purpose had everything to do with the development of the gifts that I was given for perceiving energy in my work, and synchronicities to help validate the reality of what I experienced in that realm. So, I told you about the triangle. The other image that was with the triangle was an eye in the center of it. And not too long after my surgery, I was at a healing conference, and they did a guided visualization, and then they said, okay, now draw your spiritual self that you saw on this paper. And so I drew a nautilus or a spiral with a closed eye in the center. And then coming out of the nautilus was a triangle with an open eye coming out. And then triangles and eyes all over, all interconnected. And then they said, all right, now go outside and find a picture. Find something that symbolizes it. So I went out to the woods, and I was walking around going, oh, what the heck am I going to find? A branch in the woods, I guess. And I'm walking through the woods, and I heard this voice say, dig here. And there was nothing that I could see on the forest floor. But I took a little stick, and I started digging. And a couple inches down, at that exact spot, was a triangle of glass in the earth. And right near there was a little piece of wood that looked like the eye had drawn. And then a branch that was like the interconnecting. And so that was a source of strength. I also had an experience where I walked into a doctor's office, and no one was there, or so I thought. And there was this little boy in the side room playing. So he looked at me and smiled big and put his arms up, and we played with Big Bird, and that was all great fun. And I went to my doctor's appointment and heard this kid just scream bloody murder going down the hall. I said something to the doctor like, oh, my little friend, and told him what we were doing. And he said, Sharon, did he look like this? And I said, yeah, that was him. And he just about dropped his teeth. He said, I've treated that young boy his whole life. He's severely autistic. He allows no one besides his grandmother to touch him, and he does not show any positive emotion, much less smile. And that touched me in a very deep way. So there was a lot of validation, and I opened a holistic health clinic with my then new husband, who was the man that I had spoken of that had been doing the healing work. And we opened a multidisciplinary clinic, and I started doing my healing practice and developing my work. And I was working with primarily women at the time, although that's changed. And I was realizing that I was hitting a ceiling. In other words, I was able to offer tools that felt empowering to women on a foundational level, but I just had a sense that there was more. There was something that I needed to know. I didn't know what it was. So I started to pray about it. And not that long afterwards, through a whole chain of very, very magical events, my husband and myself were introduced and met the elder, who had not worked outside of his culture and the reservation system up until that time. And he had lived in the mountains and learned from his elders who had not been as influenced by Western culture, and his people were matriarchal. So his role was to be the interpreter, to share, here's the understanding. And he brought phenomenal gifts to me, in that he said, Sharon, teach what you know. And he was very careful about that that wasn't an imposing oneself. It was a drawing forth, an invitation. And he taught me a lot about what it meant to be a woman, and the foundational roots of what it means to be connected to self-honoring, and what we bring through our bodies as women, and the power that we have and the responsibility that we have within that. And so that was a huge gift in my life. I also had a dream about a woman that I had met through my husband, who showed up on his doorstep because she'd seen him on a cable channel doing his healing work. And in the dream, she showed me stars and planets, and she wanted to check out my energy. And then shortly thereafter that, we started to work together. And she's 95 now, and has been doing healing work her whole life. And she's a gift in my life. And I referred to her earlier. So I've been very blessed to have the teachers that I have had to develop the gifts that I was given in my near-death experience, for being able to perceive inside of people where their blocks are, and bring tools to that, to bring life, to help them to awaken to their spirits in a different way. And how to make sense of relationship to nature, because I grew up in cities, so I had no idea how to do that in a respectful way. So I talked a bit about my belief that the more that we can connect with our love and our knowledge and the things that are there for us in that other realm within death, and live that will impact our planet's ability to be sustainable. And I really, truly believe that. There was someone here in the earlier sharing that said something about the song of their spirit, and I thought that was really beautiful, and it was interesting to me. I hadn't planned on sharing this, but I'm going to, because of what that other person had shared. And it's out on the table. I brought it as a gift for all of you. And I'll close with this, and because I'm really excited to hear from all of you if you have questions. That's the fun part for me, and I'm hopeful that you'll have questions so that we can connect in that way. So this is a poem that I wrote called Connection. We are not here to stand alone. We are here for relationship, to learn to dance with the song of giving and receiving. We are not here to stand alone. We are here for feeling, to open our hearts with the song of giving and receiving. We are not here to stand alone. We are here for intention, to develop our soul's wisdom with the song of giving and receiving. We are not here to stand alone. We are here for doing, to share our essence throughout the earth with the song of giving and receiving. We are not here to stand alone. We are here for listening, to kindle the growth of our worthiness with the song of giving and receiving. We are not here to stand alone. We are here for loving, to plunge to the depth of our soul's beauty with the song of giving and receiving. So thank you all for having your hearts so open to me. And I'm open to questions, and I'm hopeful that you'll have some. Yes?
Do you feel that
The question is, do I feel that the near-death experience is usually a course adjustment or for people? Is that the question? There's always free will. So I feel and believe that the near-death experience always offers exactly what that person needs to integrate something that they need on a soul wisdom level. And so for my friend Rudy, perhaps there was something about his connection to belief in life after death, or his relationship to fear, and working with his own fear in a different way. And so who am I to say that? But yes, I do believe that if we end up back here, whether we're thrown back or we have choice and choose to come back, that there's always the possibility for deepening the course of our lives, or we wouldn't be back. Yeah. Anyone else?
What age did this happen to you, the near-death experience? How old were you?
I was in my late 20s.
Late 20s, like 28? I'm
Well,
looking
let's
for a natal Saturn.
You're asking me to do math. 28.
28, a natal Saturn. And were you clinically pronounced dead during this time too?
No. And I've never gone back to my records. I know the surgery lasted longer than it was supposed to. I know I had some damage to the parathyroid, and so there were some issues there. I don't have one of those dramatic stories of, clinical death, but my belief is that if I had chosen to not come back, I would have just dropped dead on the table. So that experience, whatever was happening with my physical body, my belief is that if I had chosen to stay, that certainly, yeah. But I don't have any proof for that in the OR at all. Yeah.
Do you ever reconnect with this council?
The council is a part of my life, and the purposeful direction that I spoke of as far as life experiences, I think has had everything to do with their guidance and direction. When I do my sessions, I always begin with lighting a candle. And one of the reasons for that is that I was taught that the energy of the fire develops within us a different capacity to listen and receive. And it's important for me in my work to really receive people on a deep level. But also with that, I take the time to center myself and I connect with my light counsel for guidance for that person. And I do that within my own life too.
Am I hearing that there is a level of candle gazing that will initiate you?
The first question he was asking is if I had ongoing contact with the Council of 12, and you heard my answer. His second question is, explain that a little bit more to me.
Well, in the very beginning of your reconnecting purposefully, do you reconnect with via the candlelight, the little candlelight gazing? Actually, is that how it starts for you? And related to that, how can we, or what would you recommend that we do that we connect with our council if we have them available?
So the question was, does the lighting of the candle have anything to do with activating my connection to the council?
Yeah,
and perhaps in the beginning it might have. It's not necessary for that to happen. Maybe enhances that. In regard to the question of what can anybody here do to activate their own connection to their own guidance, listening is an energy that's receptive. And so receptivity and being very attuned to the feelings and very in your body with the feelings and open can have a lot to do with your access to that. But sometimes we have a lot in the way. you know, a lot of head chatter or confusion, or we go into the feeling and then we are in this puddle of grief and can't get out. And so that's where some of the other tools come in as a medicine to help with keeping one balanced and aligned. You know, things like hanging out with the trees, or working with a rock, or walking, or greeting our day, so that you're coming into it from a centered place. Anyone else?
Do you have a conscious recollection of the Council of 12 removing your own personal blocks so that you could manifest these other things that are happening?
The question is, do I have memory of the council removing my own personal blocks? No. I think they were kind of delighted at the idea that I have to come back and work on them. Because after all, you know, if I'm working with something, I need to embody that, or how can I give it? How can I share it, right? So I gotta walk it. But what I would say is I do remember them giving gifts, which I think has something to do with, I was always intuitive, somewhat psychic, very sensitive. Those things were heightened. And I believe that the ability to kind of move inside and feel where the areas of dissonance are and then bring tools to that had something to do with what they transmitted there. Yeah.
Do you have a prescription of sorts for a person who has pretty consistent unwarranted, I don't know if they're unwarranted, but fears and anxieties that they cannot put a finger on anything specific, but is interfering with a lot of living and enjoyment of life?
So the question is, what would I suggest to someone who has consistent and prominent fear and anxiety to the point where it's getting in the way for them? Part of that would be, obviously, hearing what the council's saying about that from their perspective, because sometimes that surprises me, getting a connection to maybe life experiences that have happened for that person. But also, energy follows breath. And so how we breathe in our body has something to do with how we feel. It's not the whole picture, it's part of it. And so one of the things that I always do with people who are having issues of anxiety is teach them how to breathe. Because most people, when you say take a deep breath, inhale deeply and exhale out like this, and anxiety is high in the body. And so I would show them that if they fill the heart with the breath and exhale the breath down through the body, out the feet, into the earth. So just like a river flowing down through them, connected to the earth. And so that helps to seat their energy lower in the body, but it also opens up an energy to being given something different that's peace-giving from the earth itself. And then we would go on and on from there. So if their experiences might have to do with their mind, and you know that tape that a lot of us get that sounds like worry, 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 worry. Okay, so relationship with the mind, you know, how to quiet that. And if that's tying in with the anxiety. So they might go out and work with a tree or develop their ways to help them develop different patterns of thinking. So it's very individual. Anyone else?
What's the dynamic like now with your parents after this experience? Because you indicated that we're kind of conservative. The energy, I'm just curious.
The question is, what's the dynamic like with my parents, because they're conservative, and you know, a lot of what I shared wasn't exactly mainstream. So, thanks for laughing. You know, say stuff just to get a rise out of them, because it's fun. And they love me, so they have, I guess, an acceptance, even if they don't understand. But they're not interested in the way of, open dialogue back and forth, integrating it into their lives, and so that's just where they are. Yeah. Anyone else?
Did you see the experience with your surgery and meeting the Council of 12? Did you see that as their opportunity to reach you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. The question is, did I see my experience with the surgery and the Council of 12 as their opportunity, or the Council's opportunity to meet me? Which would imply that I was like selected. Like, oh, I'll pick you. I don't know, but I will say that I have a feeling sense of, well, okay, so why me? Well, why not me? And that there are no that each person's role in how they transmit what they're here to offer is just what it is. So there may be other vibrations of guidance that are specific to other people, just different. And so I think that their vibration resonated somehow with my own spirit, or I would not have had that experience. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I'm also wondering if it was not, I understand the resonance, but also it was an opportunity for them to reach you, not necessarily just because you were selected, but because of the resonance, but that was the doorway, that was the portal, however you would want to put that.
Yeah, could be. But I also had a feeling that I was totally free to decide to stay. So, yeah.
Sort of two questions in one. First of all, what do you call the work that you do and yourself in doing it? And secondly, you mentioned being able to perceive people's blocks. What sorts of blocks are you referring to, and then what do you do with that once you perceive that?
Okay, so the question is, what do I call my work and what I do? And the second question is, when I perceive someone's blocks, how do I perceive it and what do I do with it?
And what exactly do you mean by blocks?
Okay, so my work is called the Living Roots Connection, which is working with the energy and wisdom of nature to support people and other tools as well. So to support people, even those people that live in the midst of high-rise cities, in awakening to their spirit and a grounded joy in their lives. That's what I do. As far as the perception of the dissonance, how to describe that one's a little tricky. I would describe my work as a spiritual teacher and intuitive. There are times that psychic information will come in. I rarely say that to people because I don't want them to have the expectation that they're going to get a reading. And because my work is very much about the process of guiding someone to opening. And so dissonance to me is a feeling sense of where the restrictions are in the flow of their energy. So if you view the body as a house and the spirit within the body, and including the mind in the body, then areas of dissonance impede flow. Kind of like you have a river and you have a big old rock or a stump in the river, then the water rushes in a different way around that, or it gets blocked up. And so that rock or that stump and that person may be, let's say, a woman who her energy's blocked right through here. She was sexually abused as a kid. Well, how do we access that? How do we work on that? So that might be working with a traditional healing song that I was trained in to actually do healing work. It might be dialoguing about that. It might be getting connected to how that's impacted her life. It might be going out and finding a rock with a prayer, with a specific asking for a specific medicine. And when something from nature is related to with respect, the way I was taught is that it will give us something on a spirit level from their spirit in a different way than if we just take. And so what comes through with that is just different for everyone. It's kind of like when I work with somebody, it's like opening a Christmas present because I never know what's inside.
Are you familiar with the MAP, the Medical Assistance Program, that it was developed probably 10 or 15 years ago now? It was developed by a woman who cultivated herbs and flowers and so forth, and she began to really develop the vibrational relationship with these in a way similar to the Bach flower remedies, but it's a little different because she doesn't sell any of her products that kind of way, but she teaches people how to invoke the nature spirits in a certain way in meditation to give them answers about what they need.
Yeah, I vaguely heard about it. I'm not familiar with that. And I guess one of the things to be really clear of with my work is that I work with people who come from all different places in their lives. Agnostic, very much in the Christian way of relating to spirituality, Buddhist, hey, I'm not sure, but I believe in energy. And so how I work with people is based on a respect for where they are and not so much a set agenda. And the work with nature isn't like, here's my whole remedy, we'll go out and sit in the forest and there you go. It's using the tools, relating to, is the word I like, relationship with all that is to support flow and support health. So, yeah.
What's so great about your approach is that you remove the old conditioning that that's the stump in the river, the flow of the river. Once you remove that, you have a transformational experience that opens up what the great teacher St. Paul called Christ in you, the hope of glory, which is the shining gift that we all have to give.
Yeah. And this gentleman was just speaking about the work removing the block and the gift coming in after that. And I believe that to be true, not just with my work, but a lot of what's out there, is that it's always here for us if we can get out of our own way and our own patterns. And I remember my late elder saying something like, he was talking about men, and he was saying, when a man learns how to respect a woman and to respect Mother Earth, then she will begin to teach him and give him her gifts. And I love that, because within that I can feel how that word respect has something to do with removing maybe whatever block was there, so that we can hear, we can listen and receive that in a different way. But it's always here for us. Yeah.
How do you do that, touching with nature to people who are in high
do the touching with nature to people who are in high rises. Oh God, you know, sometimes I just started with this gal in San Francisco, and I was going to have her begin with greeting her day and remembering that that's stepping outside, and my version of that is my bathrobe and my rubber boots, and you know, I'm out on 5 acres, and she's like, Sharon, I live in a high rise. I've got a little patch of dirt out my front door that all the doggies poop on. And I said, well, what about a tree? Can't see any trees. I said, well, can you see the sky? Well, kind of like way up there past the high. So literally with her, we had to explore that. And she walks to work. So what she's doing now is she can see a tree off in the distance on her walk to work. And right outside her work building, they have this landscapey patch with some moving water and some trees. And so she's greeting her day there. She's gone to parks and had to travel to go find rocks. Can I talk about you, Errol? All right. Errol and I were laughing one day because she had an exercise with the tree, and her tree was right outside of her apartment complex. And she said, I was sitting outside at a time when I thought nobody would walk by, Sharon, and all these people walked by and kind of gave me this look like, so you having a hard time there, lady? But even with that, if I can speak for Errol, she had a very profound gift given to her. And so that tree was right there for her with what she needed. It's tougher. Anyone else?
You've been involved with this, say, for 15 years since your experience, and you talked about your husband had been involved with, maybe not necessarily the same thing or the same experience, but been around metaphysical different things for a long time. My experiences started almost 2 years ago, and they've been evolving, and I'm noticing for myself that there's a lot of similarities, I guess, to the extent that it seems like my experience, kind of like with what, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, was saying, not that I was selected, but almost like some of the stuff happening has been kind of pre-planned, that maybe I might not be consciously aware of it, but somehow, almost like it's supposed to happen, this was the right time, kind of like there is no coincidences when kind of spirit like taps, it just kind of taps in. But I'm noticing that it seems like my experiences have been customly designed for me. And I'm noticing that everybody seems to have different types of experiences. You've got your 12 elders. I might not necessarily have 12 elders that are flame beings or whatever. I noticed, you know, one speaker talked about reptilian beings. I may not have something like that. But however, when I look out on the internet or I try to speak with different people or I read different literature, I'm noticing that there seems to be a lot of people that want to claim that their way is the right way or that it's the only way. Almost like it reminds me of like the fascist religious, which is, I want nothing to do with organized religion because of that reason, saying that things have to be canned or penned into one type of hole. And I'm seeing for myself, my guts are screaming, saying, no, what you went through, you know, as you know, scary and crazy as it might have been for yourself, is your own beautiful, neat experience.
Right.
But mine's going to definitely vary, and it's going to be towards me. But yet, sometimes I notice when I'm looking up stuff on the internet, you know, and someone's saying there's no such thing as soulmates. It doesn't exist, and it's like, you know, well, who gives you the right to say that? And
Yeah.
How do you contend with that, being out like as a public speaker and doing different things like with Diane and INs and stuff? Or like some of the seminars, or they have those like big, like you said, conferences in Seattle. How do people counter that with people like that?
So I think the question is,
And it was really long.
with all the different experiences and ways that people have of relating to healing work, metaphysics, spirituality, that a lot of what's out there seems to be carries an energy with it of this is like the one right way, and how do I deal with that in my own life, in my own work? I believe that my work is not for everyone. I'd be way too busy.
You just go
So,
with your guts?
I go with my guts. I offer people what I feel from my guts. They always have the freedom to explore that and say, Sharon, I was hanging out with a tree in front of my condo. I felt like a dork, and I don't want to do that again. And that's okay. And there are different tools that resonate with different people. If I work with 3 different people that all had the presenting same issue, money back that I'd work with them in different ways based on where they are. And and within my own life, I try to remember the idea that each of us has our own walk in awakening to our spirits. Oh, you know what? I forgot something. I was going to talk about how on the other side, there was no resistance to pain. And so there was a feeling sense of being able to witness what was happening here on the earth plane and feeling oh so happy for like our most loved one having this painful, horrendous experience because we could see what that was offering. And so within the how of how we relate here to what's happening, who am I to say what that other person needs? And I'm a mother, I have an 8-year-old, and boy, that's a tough one to walk because sometimes he creates some pain for himself. And I want to say, hey, this is the right way, that's the wrong way, what are you doing? And I can offer, but I can't dominate. And I think the thing that you're probably picking up on is that the perspective about the only for everyone, you know, this is the only way to relate to spirit for everyone is foundationally abhorrent to your spirit because it doesn't respect what you need unless you're an exact match with that. So, any other questions?
Do you do medical intuitive work as well as emotional, or?
The question is, do I do medical intuitive work as far as emotional? No. There are certainly times that we're working where I will perceive disease and restriction, but I don't not do medical intuitive. Somebody called and said that's what I want, I refer them out. Yeah.
The Living Roots connection, what is that relationship with you?
The question is the Living Roots connection, what is that relationship? That's the name that I picked and that picked me for what I call my work, which is what I've developed out of the teachings and my connections to the teachers that came after that. So it's foundationally about support for helping people to awaken to their spirit and their joy within their lives. But there are a lot of elements there with relationship with all that is here, meaning nature. Anyone else? Erin?
Could you speak a little more about your relationship with the woman elder and maybe some of the teachings that she's had for you?
So the question is to talk a bit more about the woman elder and the teachings that I've had with her. Yeah, she actually is part native, but that's not her connection. She doesn't have a connection to that part of her culture. She has taught me a lot about perception of energy, how to work with it, this piece about the heart being the container for the light of our spirit, and how to reconnect with that. And so that's, I think, yeah. Anyone else?
A question related maybe to possibly cosmology would be with the Council of 12 and the Sea of Beings. Do you have were you given any information about who these beings were, what they were there to do? Any idea who they were, where they were going?
Yeah, the question is the sea of beings that were behind and around, all around the council, that were not the council. did I have any connection to their purpose? I wasn't told anything about that, but I had a sense that they were just there because that's where they were. And maybe they were there learning too. I don't know. Yeah.
I have a question about the elder, the woman that was teaching you. Is there any resources of knowledge or books on that? Because I'm in the same straits. I'm doing energy work with nature and so forth, and I don't have any basis for knowledge, and I'm really looking for it now.
Yeah, the question is the work with the elder, if I could refer any books. I love books. I have a library full, and they all have their own value.
Pertaining to that
To the-
knowledge you learned, though, anything in that area?
There's a book written by Chet Alexander. It's called Jim Crow Speaks, and it's his relationship with a Jamaican elder. It is one of the closest that I've found. He's Kabbalah trained Jewish, and so he's done some amalgaming with that with his other traditions. I've not studied from Chet. I understand he does teach, and I think his school is something like a rainbow school. There are lots of books out there as far as, written on Native culture, about Native teachers that offer various things, but a lot of that has been changed, and I think what you're after is not so much the culture as the relationship.
Right, because
and how to open that.
I've got etheric beings and creatures coming to me all the time, giving me energy, transferring it to me, but I can see things in people, but I don't know how to use it.
Okay, there's another book, Living as If the God in All Life Mattered. I can't remember her name right now. That's another
But that's the,
That's the macro.
Oh, is it?
All right.
That's where I heard that. Yeah. What's her name? Michelle
Michelle Smallright.
Smallright. Yeah. Yeah.
what's her name again?
Michelle Smallright. Question back there?
What were the medicine, the physical medicine that you were able to take, and how was the process of it?
The physical medicine I was able to take for the cancer, you mean? I actually did have the in-hospital radiation treatment as well, and what they removed was the thyroid, so I'm on thyroid replacement for life since I no longer have one. People ask me if I'm in remission, and I say no, the cancer's gone. Because I don't like that other word. It's not an empowering word to me. And I basically have done no treatment since that time. So I've been very fortunate in that way. I've done a lot on a holistic level as far as strengthening myself, my whole body. And that's been just, a lot of different things over the years.
And also, are you using carefully the words that you use to express about yourself and about others also?
Okay, I'm not sure I understand.
Has your vocabulary changed?
Oh, has my vocabulary changed since that experience? I think the Cree elder was most instrumental with that. Yes, it has. It has. And because words carry vibration. And so, for example, when I first met him, he said, in my culture, if I'm learning from an elder and I am trying to understand, and I say to them, well, why would you use this plant for such and such? He said, that elder will stop talking and maybe not share again. And the reason is because the word why carries an energy of judgment. He said, but on the other hand, if I said, I need to understand the reason. And see, that's a beautiful tool, because remember with this other woman I was saying something about the mind? Okay, so if one of my patterns is judgmental thinking with myself, if I'm walking around saying, why this, why that, if I simply change it to, I don't know, why did I eat a whole box of ice cream? I just couldn't help myself. Okay, I could change that to, I need to understand the reason that I ate the whole box of ice cream that I chose to eat. I chose to eat it, right? I have Diane up here, which means that we're up with our time. So the word, just to close that off, the word yes, very, very much so. Whole different way of speaking in relationship. Thank you. Thank all of you so much for
Thank you so much. We're so glad to have you join us today. We hope to see all of you for dinner. Our committees can come, movies, and we'll see